Dear listeners, we're back with a new story. Get ready for cheating, revenge, and wild relationship drama. It was a typical Thursday evening when the weight of the world shifted beneath my feet. I was at the kitchen table, mindlessly pushing around the remnants of our hastily prepared dinner, pasta and marinara sauce, the kind we usually made when we didn't have the energy to whip up something special. The flickering overhead light cast a warm glow over the small space, but it felt cold as I watched Sandra scroll through her phone, a smile creeping across her face. "Hey, I was thinking," she began, her voice light and casual, "I'm going on a dinner date with Matthew." The words hung in the air like a storm cloud. I blinked, unsure if I'd heard her correctly. "Wait, what?" I finally managed, my heart pounding. "A date? With a coworker?" "Yeah," she replied, looking up at me with those bright green eyes that were usually filled with warmth but now seemed distant. "It's just dinner. We've been talking about it for a while. He's really nice, Donnie." I felt a rush of emotions, shock, betrayal, confusion, but mostly, I felt a deep-seated fear creeping in. "What about us?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The pasta turned to ash in my mouth. Sandra leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms as if to shield herself from my response. "I just thought, maybe we could explore what an open marriage would look like. You know, if we both want to." I rubbed my temples, trying to process what she was saying. "An open marriage? Just like that? What do you mean by explore?" She sighed, her gaze drifting toward the window where the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in hues of orange and purple. "I don't know, Donnie. I feel like we've been in a rut. You know how life can get. I just thought it might be liberating." "Liberating?" I echoed, feeling my pulse quicken. "You mean to open the door for someone else to come in? Just like that?" "It doesn't have to be a big deal," she said, her voice calm. "It's just dinner. I thought it might be fun for both of us." "Fun?" I asked, incredulous. "How can this be fun? What about the commitment we made to each other?" "I'm not saying we throw everything away," she shot back, a hint of frustration creeping into her tone. "Can't we just try something different? I want to feel desired again." The word struck me like a physical blow. "Desired?" I repeated, feeling a knot tighten in my stomach. "What does that mean for us?" "For our marriage." Sandra's expression softened, and for a moment, I saw the vulnerability behind her bravado. "It means I want to feel alive, Donnie. I love you, but I think we've both lost a bit of ourselves. Maybe this could help us find it again, or it could destroy us," I countered, a lump forming in my throat. I looked away, struggling to find my footing in this new reality. "What if you catch feelings for him? Then we address it together," she said, her voice firm yet gentle. "I want us to be open and honest about everything, even if it's hard." I let her words hang in the air, my mind racing. This was more than a casual conversation, it was a turning point. The foundation of our marriage felt fragile, ready to crack under the weight of her suggestion. "You want to be with someone else, Sandra. What does that mean for us?" "Maybe it doesn't mean we're losing each other," she said, her voice low and earnest. "Maybe it means we're finding ourselves again, together." As I stared into her eyes, I realized the truth, she was serious about this. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a precipice, staring into an abyss. The thought of losing her was unbearable, yet the prospect of exploring this new territory was equally daunting. The silence between us stretched on, thick and suffocating, as I tried to understand how we had arrived at this moment. "Let's think about it," I finally said, my voice steady but my heart racing. "But I can't promise anything." Sandra nodded slowly, her expression a mixture of hope and uncertainty. "That's all I ask. Just think about it." As we sat there, the kitchen felt eerily quiet, the clatter of silverware and the hum of the refrigerator filling the void. The warmth of our home, once a sanctuary, now felt charged with tension. Little did I know, we were about to step into uncharted territory, one that would challenge the very core of our relationship. The days following Sandra's announcement felt like a surreal blur, each hour stretching out like a taut rubber band, ready to snap at any moment. We went through the motions of our daily lives, work, chores, and the occasional laugh, but an unspoken tension hung in the air, a palpable reminder of the conversation that had shifted everything. It was a Friday night, and the house was unusually quiet. I was sitting on the couch, flipping through channels, but nothing held my interest. My mind kept drifting back to that fateful night when Sandra had first mentioned the possibility of an open marriage. My heart raced at the thought, a conflicting mix of fear and curiosity swirling within me. I glanced at Sandra, who was sitting at the dining table, her laptop open in front of her as she scrolled through social media. She seemed so engrossed, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of resentment. Had she forgotten the gravity of what we were discussing? "Hey, Sand," I called out, trying to keep my tone light. "What are you looking at?" She looked up, her expression shifting as she caught my gaze. "Just some stuff from work." "You know how it is," she replied, but I could see her mind was elsewhere. I took a deep breath, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. "Can we talk about what we discussed?" She closed her laptop, giving me her full attention. "Sure, what's on your mind?" I hesitated, my heart pounding in my chest. "I've been thinking about the open marriage idea, and I don't know if I can do it. It scares me, Sandra." "I get that," she replied, her tone softening. "It scares me too. But maybe that's part of it, stepping outside our comfort zones. We both need to feel something different, right? I just don't want to lose you in the process," I confessed, my voice shaking slightly. "What if it doesn't work? What if it changes us forever?" Sandra leaned forward, her eyes earnest. "I don't want to lose you either, Donnie. But staying stagnant is suffocating me. I feel like we've both been holding back for so long. Maybe this is a chance to rediscover ourselves." "Rediscover ourselves?" I repeated, feeling the weight of her words. "So we go out, sleep with other people, and hope we come back unchanged. How does that even work?" "Not just physically," she said, her brow furrowing. "Emotionally too. We can set boundaries. We can agree on what's acceptable and what's not. It's about communication." I leaned back in my chair, trying to process everything. "And what if I catch feelings for someone? What then? What if you do?" "That's a risk we have to acknowledge," she replied, her voice steady. "But I think we're both mature enough to handle it. We can't let fear dictate our choices. It's about trust and honesty." I looked at her, really looked at her. Beneath the confident exterior, I saw the vulnerability, the fear of losing what we had. "I'm scared, Sandra. I've always believed in our commitment. This feels like it could tear us apart." "I understand," she said softly, reaching across the table to take my hand. "But think of it this way, maybe it'll strengthen our bond. We'd be doing this together, not against each other. It's about exploring what we both want." A heavy silence fell between us as I mulled over her words. Could this really lead to something better? My mind drifted to Mary, the persistent client who always seemed to make me laugh, who had a way of bringing out a side of me I thought I had lost. "You know, there's someone I've been thinking about." Sandra's eyes widened slightly, her expression a mix of surprise and curiosity. "Who, Mary?" "She's a client, but we've clicked in meetings." "I don't know, maybe I'd like to explore that." My stomach twisted as I confessed this, fearing her reaction. Sandra's gaze softened. "Mary? Wow, I didn't see that coming. Are you attracted to her?" "Yeah, I guess," I admitted, rubbing the back of my neck. "But it's not just about physical attraction. She makes me feel alive, like I'm not just Donnie the husband, but Donnie the person." "That's important," Sandra said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want you to feel alive too. Just remember that we're in this together." I sighed, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on me. "Okay. I'll agree to this open marriage thing. But we have to set clear boundaries. We can't let this get out of hand." Absolutely, Sandra agreed, relief washing over her features. Let's make a list of what we're comfortable with and what we're not. As we started to outline our boundaries, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. Perhaps this was the beginning of something new, a way to breathe life back into our marriage. But beneath that calm, a flicker of fear remained, a fear of the unknown and the potential consequences of our choices. After hours of discussion, we finally felt like we had a plan. But as I lay in bed that night, my thoughts swirled like a storm, leaving me to wonder if we had just opened Pandora's box. What would happen when we started to explore the edges of our relationship? Would we be able to navigate the complexities that lay ahead, or were we setting ourselves up for failure? The answers were elusive, hidden behind the veil of our decision, waiting to be uncovered as we ventured into uncharted territory together. The evening of our first separate dates arrived quicker than I expected, bringing with it a storm of emotions that I couldn't quite pin down. I felt the anticipation, the anxiety, and an unfamiliar sense of excitement. This was the night we had talked about, the night when Sandra would go out with Matthew, and I would meet up with Mary. It all felt surreal, like stepping into a life that didn't belong to me. I watched Sandra as she stood in front of the bedroom mirror, carefully applying her makeup. She wore a deep red dress that I hadn't seen her in for years, one that hugged her figure in all the right places. I felt a lump rise in my throat, a mix of jealousy and longing. "You look amazing," I said, my voice catching. She paused, her eyes meeting mine in the reflection. "Thanks," she replied, offering me a small, nervous smile. "You really think so?" "Yeah," I said, swallowing hard. "Matthew's going to be blown away." Sandra turned to face me, and I saw the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. "Are you sure you're okay with this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," I admitted, rubbing the back of my neck. "But I agreed to this, didn't I? I want us to try. We said we'd be honest about everything, remember?" She nodded, but I could see the tension etched across her features. "I know. I don't want to hurt you, Donnie." "You're not," I said, though I wasn't entirely sure if I believed it myself. "Just, be careful, okay?" Sandra walked over and kissed me softly on the lips. "You too," she murmured. "You deserve to feel good tonight. Don't hold back." The sound of my phone buzzing jolted me back to reality. I glanced down and saw a message from Mary. "Hey. I'm already here. Can't wait to see you." I felt my heart skip a beat, a rush of adrenaline surging through me. "I should get going," I said, slipping on my jacket. "Mary's waiting." Sandra nodded, but before I could turn to leave, she grabbed my hand. "Donnie," she said, her voice tinged with vulnerability. "No matter what happens tonight, we come back to each other. Promise?" I squeezed her hand, holding on tighter than I probably should have. "I promise." The air outside was crisp as I made my way to the bar where I'd arranged to meet Mary. It was one of those trendy spots with dim lighting, sleek furniture, and a soundtrack that hummed just below the level of conversation. As I stepped inside, I spotted her instantly, sitting at a high table, a glass of wine in hand, her eyes lighting up when she saw me. "Donnie. You made it," Mary said, flashing that radiant smile that always seemed to put me at ease. "Hey," I replied, sliding into the seat across from her. "Sorry if I kept you waiting." "Not at all," she said, leaning in just a bit closer. "You look good. Really good." "Thanks," I muttered, feeling a warmth spread across my face. "You too." We talked, laughed, and shared stories over drinks, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt desired. Mary had this way of looking at me that made me feel seen, as if I were the only man in the room. The more we talked, the more I found myself letting go, enjoying the way her hand would occasionally brush against mine, the way her laughter made my chest tighten. But in the back of my mind, there was always Sandra. I couldn't stop myself from glancing at my phone, half expecting a message or a call that never came. What was she doing? Was she laughing with Matthew, sharing the same kind of intimacy I was now experiencing with Mary? Are you okay? Mary's voice pulled me out of my thoughts, her eyes searching mine. You seem distracted. Sorry, I said, forcing a smile. It's just a lot to process. I get it, she replied, reaching across the table to take my hand in hers. If it's any consolation, I'm really glad you're here. I've been waiting for a chance to spend time with you outside of work. I felt a surge of guilt but also excitement. I'm glad I'm here too, I admitted, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. Meanwhile, across town, Sandra sat across from Matthew at a dimly lit restaurant, her heart pounding in her chest. She had felt confident when she first arrived, but as the evening progressed, the reality of what she was doing began to sink in. Every laugh, every touch, felt like a betrayal to the man she'd left behind at home. You're quiet tonight, Matthew observed, taking a sip of his wine. Everything okay? Sandra forced a smile. Yeah, just a little distracted, I guess. Thinking about your husband? Matthew asked, his tone gentle but probing. Yeah, she admitted, feeling the knot tighten in her stomach. It's just strange, you know. Doing this. I thought it would be easier. Matthew leaned forward, his eyes sincere. You don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with, Sandra. We can take things slow. I appreciate that, she said, grateful for his understanding. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling of guilt. What am I doing here? She thought, glancing at her phone, hoping for a message from Donnie that would give her an excuse to leave. As the night drew on, both Sandra and I found ourselves staring into the abyss of our choices. I watched Mary as she leaned in closer, whispering something that made me laugh, and I could feel my defenses crumbling. I could see the possibility of something more, something thrilling and new, but it came with the shadow of everything I stood to lose. When I finally walked Mary to her car, she hesitated before turning to face me. I had a great time tonight, she said, her voice soft and inviting. Me too, I replied, feeling the pull between us. And then, before I could second-guess myself, I leaned in and kissed her. It was electric, everything I'd hoped it would be. But as I pulled away, reality came crashing back. My wife was out there, with another man, and I just crossed a line I couldn't uncross. Good night, Mary, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Good night, Donnie, she replied, lingering for a moment before getting into her car and driving away. When I arrived home, the house was dark and quiet. I found Sandra sitting at the kitchen table, still in her dress, a half-empty glass of wine in front of her. She looked up as I walked in, her eyes searching mine. How was it? She asked, her voice barely audible. It was different, I replied, taking a seat across from her. And you? She stared into her glass, her fingers tracing the rim. Different. For a moment, we sat there in silence, the weight of the evening pressing down on us. We had opened a door that couldn't be closed, and now we had to face what lay on the other side. We promised we'd be honest, I said, finally breaking the silence. I know, she replied, her eyes meeting mine. And I am, Donnie. I just don't know what to do with all of this yet. Neither do I admitted, my heart aching with uncertainty. But we'll figure it out. Together, she repeated, her voice tinged with both hope and fear. And as we sat there, holding on to each other in the darkness, I knew that whatever happened next, it would be a journey we'd have to navigate side by side. The morning after felt like waking up from a dream that left a lingering sense of unease, the kind where you're not quite sure where reality begins and the fantasy ends. The house was quiet, almost unnaturally so, and I found myself staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of everything that had happened the night before. The kiss with Mary, the look on Sandra's face when I'd walked through the door, it all played on a loop in my mind. I eventually dragged myself out of bed, drawn by the smell of coffee brewing in the kitchen. There was Sandra, standing by the counter, her hair still tousled from sleep, wearing one of my old t-shirts. She looked up when I entered, and for a moment, there was a flicker of something, hurt, maybe, or uncertainty, before she masked it with a small, tight smile. Morning, she said, handing me a cup. Morning, I replied, my voice rough with sleep. I took a sip, savoring the warmth, and leaned against the counter, facing her. How are you feeling, honestly? I don't know, she admitted, letting out a soft sigh. I thought I'd feel liberated, maybe. Or empowered. But mostly, I just feel confused. Me too, I said, nodding. I mean, last night was intense. And not in the way I expected. Sandra studied me for a moment, and I could see the questions swirling in her eyes. Did you kiss her? The question caught me off guard, and I felt my heart skip a beat. Yeah, I confessed, unable to meet her gaze. I did. She inhaled sharply, and I could see the pain flash across her face, but she quickly composed herself. Was it good? It was, I admitted, feeling a pang of guilt twist in my gut. But it wasn't what I thought it would be. It didn't feel right, not really. Sandra nodded slowly, as if she understood. I kissed Matthew too, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Just once. And it was nice, I guess. But all I kept thinking about was you. I felt a strange sense of relief wash over me, mingled with jealousy. Did you feel anything for him? No, she replied, shaking her head. Not really. It was just a moment. But it made me realize something. What's that? I asked, my heart pounding. That I don't want this, she said, her voice firm. I don't want to be with anyone else. I thought it would make me feel free, but all it did was make me feel more alone. I took a step closer, reaching out to take her hand in mine. I don't want to be with anyone else either, Sandra. I thought maybe it would help me understand myself better, but all it did was show me how much I need you. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she bit her lip, trying to hold them back. Then why are we doing this to ourselves? I don't know, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I guess we thought it would make things easier, or maybe we were just looking for answers outside of ourselves. But all it's done is hurt us. She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. I want us to go back, Donnie. I want to feel safe again, like I can trust you and that you can trust me. I want to rebuild what we had. Me too, I said, squeezing her hand. But it's not going to be easy, is it? No, she replied, shaking her head. It's going to take time. And a lot of work. We stood there in silence for a moment, the gravity of our situation settling over us like a heavy fog. But there was a sense of clarity, too, a realization that we were finally facing the truth. No more games, no more pretending. It was just us, raw and exposed, with all our flaws laid bare. Maybe we should try counseling, I suggested, breaking the silence. I mean, if we really want to make this work, maybe we need help. Sandra looked up at me, her eyes searching mine. Would you be willing to do that? Yes, I said without hesitation. I'd do anything to make this right. She let out a shaky breath, a mixture of relief and uncertainty. Okay. Let's try. Let's give it everything we've got. In the days that followed, we made an appointment with a marriage counselor, a woman named Dr. Winters who came highly recommended. Our first session felt like stepping into the lion's den, every word heavy with unspoken emotions. Dr. Winters asked us to share why we were there, and as I listened to Sandra speak, I heard the pain in her voice, the fear of losing me, the desire to find herself again. Donnie, Dr. Winters said, turning her attention to me, what do you think drove you to agree to this open marriage? I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her question. I think I was scared, I admitted, my voice shaking. I was afraid that maybe we'd lost the spark, that Sandra didn't want me anymore. And when she brought it up, I thought, maybe this was the only way to keep her. Sandra's eyes softened, and she reached for my hand. I never stopped wanting you, Donnie, she said, her voice breaking. I lost myself along the way, and I thought maybe I needed to find something outside of us to feel whole again. But you don't, I replied, squeezing her hand. You don't need to look outside. I'm here, and I want to help you find whatever it is you're looking for. Dr. Winters nodded, her expression thoughtful. It sounds like you both have a lot of love for each other but also a lot of fear. Fear of losing each other, fear of being vulnerable. The challenge now is learning how to face that fear together, instead of running from it. As the session ended, Sandra and I sat in the car, not saying a word, just holding each other's hands. It was the first time in a long time that I felt a flicker of hope, like maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. Back at home, we sat on the couch, the tension from before finally starting to lift. "So, where do we go from here?" Sandra asked, her eyes meeting mine. "We start over," I said, smiling for the first time in what felt like weeks. "One step at a time." She nodded, and for the first time, I saw a glimmer of the woman I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. "I want to fight for us, Donnie. I'm not ready to give up." "Neither am I," I replied, pulling her into my arms. And as we sat there, holding each other, I knew that no matter how difficult the road ahead might be, we were finally ready to walk it together.